As requested by Indonesia's government, civil society and others, Brussels introduces the European Union Timber Regulation. The EUTR, as it becomes known, prohibits illegally harvested timber or timber products from anywhere in the world being imported into the EU. Though separate, the EUTR and the forthcoming EU VPA FLEGT licensing system exist in parallel.
Under the European Union Timber Regulation, importers must demonstrate the ownership of the timber from the point it was cut down to the point it arrives in Europe. They must show that it was harvested legally, and they must show that specific laws were upheld in the transport of the timber to Europe.
Since leaving the European Union, the UK has continued to implement the regulation, renaming it the UKTR.
Terbitnya EU Timber Regulation itu bisa dikatakan sebuah kemenangan bagi semua pihak yang memang menginginkan negara konsumen mengambil tanggung jawabnya dalam isu perdagangan ilegal kayu dan produk kayu.
Karena membatasi hak masyarakat hukum adat untuk memanfaatkan hasil kekayaan alam yang berada di wilayah adatnya.
In a case brought by the Indigenous Peoples Alliance, Indonesia's Constitutional Court overturned Suharto's 1967 law, which transferred control of most of the country's land to the state. The ruling clears a legal path for indigenous peoples to reclaim their ancestral or customary lands.
Ini sebetulnya keputusan yang sangat luar biasa karena artinya negara mengakui hutan adat di dalam wilayah adat. Sayangnya, menyusul putusan MK 35 ini, langkah yang diambil pemerintah untuk mengakui hutan adat ternyata membuat pelaksanaannya sangat sulit.
Suharto's 30-year regime had refused to recognise indigenous peoples and their ancestral or customary rights and lands. All natural resources were controlled by the state.
Jadi terlihat seperti ada keengganan dari pemerintah untuk mengakui keberadaan masyarakat adat, termasuk mengakui teritori atau wilayah masyarakat adat dan hutan adatnya.
However, despite the government-imposed obstacles, many indigenous peoples begin the process of trying to reclaim their ancestral or customary forests and lands. Across Indonesia, some palm oil companies are using the government's drive to hugely expand the sector as a license to act with impunity.
Banyaknya penebangan atau penebangan ilegal atau adanya illegal logging dilakukan oleh perkebunan kelapa sawit. Dari awal tidak ada perkebunan kelapa sawit yang benar di Kalimantan Tengah masuk. Mereka membuka lahan, ada yang berkedok izin yang cuma sekian, tapi besarannya 2 kali lipat dari izin tersebut. Dan juga mereka menebang hutan-hutan di dalam konsesi itu, baik pun konflik teritorial, konflik dengan masyarakat.
Perusahaan-perusahaan kelapa sawit yang bisa membuka dan menebangi hutan dalam jumlah yang luas bahkan sebelum izinnya beroperasi atau yang izinnya keluar dari proses-proses yang korup, ini tentu saja kemudian menghasilkan kayu-kayu yang tidak sah juga atau ilegal. Dan ini menjadi modus baru sebetulnya dalam pembalakan liar, yaitu dengan menggunakan izin kelapa sawit untuk membuka hutan. Dan sepanjang proses pemberian izin yang syarat korupsi itu tidak diperbaiki atau tidak diatasi, masalah ini akan selalu ada.
And what of the palm oil produced on plantations throughout Indonesia? How can consumers know whether the palm oil in the products they buy has been ethically and sustainably grown and produced? As Indonesia and several other palm oil producing countries don't have effective legislation which addresses these issues, the industry and others have put forward a system of voluntary regulation and certification.
This is the story of a con involving a natural product that we all use every day, sometimes without being aware of it. It's also the story of a watchdog with no bite and something known as greenwashing.
When an organisation says it's doing something green and that's got good environmental credentials, but it's not, that's greenwashing.
The product is palm oil, a vegetable oil that can be found in almost 50% of everything we buy, from ice cream to lipstick. And it's a business worth more than $70 billion a year. And it's the body that labels palm oil as sustainable that's doing the greenwashing. It now has more than 4,500 members in over 90 countries. The RSPO introduced a set of guiding principles and a certification process to guarantee the supply of sustainable palm oil. However, the Environmental Investigation Agency partnered with the Malaysian NGO Grassroots and produced a damning report, Who Watches the Watchman? Among other things, we discovered
widespread flaws in the certification.
Auditors were supplying fraudulent assessments to cover up violations in the RSPO's standards, and there were failures in identifying indigenous land right claims.
There were serious labour abuses on plantations, including the illegal employment of children.
There were flagrant conflicts of interest and corruption.
And certifications awarded to companies with weak understanding of the standards they were supposed to uphold.
Stung by the report, the RSPO sets up the Assurance Task Force to address its list of failings. Following a change in leadership, Telapak alters its direction. To preserve the focus, values and ideals of the original organisation, most of the founders and nationwide membership leave and form a new NGO, which they call Kaoem Telapak. Japan introduces the Clean Wood Act, which specifies that all wood and wood products entering the country must have been harvested legally. 15 years after the Bali Conference, 6 years on from the timber legality verification system becoming law in Indonesia, and 2 years after the European Union and Indonesia signed their voluntary partnership agreement, the EU's Forest Law Enforcement Governance and Trade Licensing System, also known as FLEGT, finally comes online.
FLEGT licensed products from Indonesia are free to sail straight into Europe's ports and then travel around the rest of the Union, while similar products from neighbouring countries are delayed as they need to prove due diligence and can be refused entry.
Yang menurut kami kalau ini menunjukkan juga bahwa dengan adanya political will dari pemerintah, partisipasi penuh dari para pihak dan proses yang transparan dan akuntabel, reformasi di sektor kehutanan bisa dicapai.
The licensing was really important for quite a lot of things, but firstly, after all the hard work and slog that it had taken all this time, Indonesia had stayed with that commitment and landed, and there they were with the license. Secondly, they were the first country in the world, actually, but more importantly in the region, to have got a FLEGT license. This really helped drive the other countries who were looking at VPAs in moving forward in what they wanted. But thirdly, and more importantly, I suppose, to Indonesia, it meant that the value of their furniture and wood products into the EU market grew.
South Korea revises its legislation on the sustainable use of timber to prevent unverified wood entering the country. The President of Indonesia introduces a 3-year moratorium on the issuing of permits for new palm oil plantations. And a year later, he makes permanent the moratorium on the cutting down of primary forest and the clearing of virgin peatland.
Keputusan Presiden untuk memberlakukan moratorium pemberian izin di hutan primer dan lahan gambut menjadi permanen itu sangat kami apresiasi. Meskipun idealnya perlindungan ini dikeluarkan dalam bentuk produk hukum atau kebijakan, bukan sekedar instruksi Presiden.
And how have things changed regarding palm oil? Can consumers now buy RSPO-certified palm oil from Indonesia or elsewhere, confident that it's been ethically and sustainably grown and produced?
"4 years on, we're producing a new report, which has found that hardly anything has changed, and some violations have got worse. Some of the biggest companies in the world, like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and Johnson & Johnson, are all members of the RSPO.
They should be really worried about this because this is undermining the whole credibility of the RSPO system, and these companies, a lot of them are buying the RSPO certified palm oil at a cost to themselves, and if the RSPO is not upholding any of its own rules and this palm oil isn't what it says it is on the tin, then that's a major problem for the industry.
And what about us?
Consumers should be worried because they're buying this certified palm oil on the understanding that it does not cause harm to the environment, that it's not destroying wildlife or forests, and it's not exploiting local people, when in fact the RSPO is not keeping to those rules and it is doing those things.
Jadi saya rasa balik lagi kembali jika kita ingin memastikan bahwa pengelolaan atau memastikan industri sawit yang berkelanjutan itu kembali harus berawal dari pembenahan tata kelola di sektor ini, dan ini harus berlaku mandatori bagi seluruh pelaku usaha perkebunan dan juga industrinya.
China, the world's largest importer of timber, amends its forestry law to ban the purchase, process or transport of illegally sourced wood. In 2019, over €1 billion worth of EU FLEGT licensed timber and timber products from Indonesia are seamlessly imported into the European Union.
Ini sebetulnya merupakan prestasi besar bagi Indonesia. Artinya, karena dulunya Indonesia dikenal sebagai negara dengan tingkat illegal logging tertinggi, kami di Kaoem Telapak merasa bangga bahwa kami merupakan bagian dari proses ini.